Hi guys, welcome to lesson 5 from English Writing Skills. I am Ashley Foyter-Fort. The students I teach are groups 1F, 1G, and 1H. This video is intended for my own students, however you are welcome to make use of the content if you are from another class as well. Bear in mind that my students are 1 week behind, except for one of my groups who I had on Friday, 1H, they are technically 2 weeks behind. I caught them up to date though in the last video lesson. So our deadlines are 1 week later. If you hear me mentioning deadlines that are later than you have in your class, please make sure that you refer to the deadlines from your own class because your own teacher will know the deadlines that you have set for your own work. But other than that, the material that is covered in this lesson is pertinent to any English writing skills student from any class, so you are welcome to make use of this video. I'd like to apologize as we start for the dark lighting as well as the sound of my dishwasher. Unfortunately, because of the coronavirus rules, both my husband and I have to work from home, so that's been making this a bit challenging with a 1.5-year-old, and that is why this is being uploaded late at night. I've been doing my best to make sure that everything is uploaded in advance or on time, and I hope that you guys have no questions. There will be a live stream video tomorrow, so make sure to check that out in the class threads. I've given you guys the times for that as well. Okay, so let's jump right in. We're going to start on Blackboard. So on the main page of Blackboard, you can see the class announcements. There are some from individual teachers. We're going to go over to class threads and down to one of my classes. 1F is my first class. You'll see here the top link up here, that's 1F, the discussion forum, so where you've uploaded your summary drafts or other work that we've done in class, as well as questions. And I've been checking that and giving some feedback there, but the first priority at the moment is to record the video lectures and to communicate with you guys about assignments. So you will not be getting feedback on your summaries until all of the deadlines have passed and I see that you have given your peer review to another student or multiple other students. So you will not be getting feedback from me within the next week and a half in the forums, but you will by the end of the term, before your final assignments are due, you will get feedback from me there. This next section here, the TED Talk summary, all of the classes have an FRS link here. My students have been given an extension until April 3rd instead of March 27th due to 1 week less of class. I have posted earlier on this channel a video recap for lessons 1 through 3 of English writing skills, focusing mostly on lesson 3 for my students who did not get their third lesson, but also touching on the topics from weeks 1 and 2. So it's a good refresher for you guys who either missed a class or simply can't remember anymore what was discussed in those lessons. And then I also did a lesson 4 video, which you can also go to here on my channel, and there's a direct link here for my students in their class thread. All of the information that you needed for lesson week 4 is also written here and laid out clearly for you guys. Very useful summary example here. And then the same for this lesson week 5 content, editing quiz 1. Your required reading before this week was in the Little Brown Handbook, chapter 3, as well as chapter 40, unit 40A, the commonly misused words. So you guys have a few different points of material. Your content video, which is this video, that's why there's no link yet because I am in the process of videoing this, and once it's uploaded and on YouTube, I will add the link to this folder. Then the prior knowledge test, I've uploaded that for you guys, so if you haven't done that yet, pause this video, open up here the PDF doc or the PDF to take this prior knowledge test. I will show you what that looks like. It's 3 simple questions. The first one, to write a few sentences on the difference between revising and editing. The second one is to give 6 tips for gaining distance from your work in order to critically analyze it after writing your first draft. That's very useful not only for the editing quizzes, but also for editing your summary. And then number 3 is to name 3 to 5 important things to consider when revising according to the Little Brown Handbook. So you should have the answers for all of this based on the reading that you had for today in the Little Brown Handbook. And then you have answers are also posted there as well. I'm not going to open them because you should do the prior knowledge test before you see the answers, but you can open the answers yourself here in the folder. Okay, and once you have completed this lesson, I will go back to this at the end. You should take the Kahoot quiz to help. It's just to cover some of the material that you've already done. And then as a reminder, all of the content that you are learning today in class is in the module guide on page 27. Oh, that's the wrong duck. On page 27 of your module guide, you will see that you need to cover chapter 17, 18, 37, and then 3, B, and E are all listed here. And we will go through some of the exercises from those units to help you prepare for the editing quiz to cover those topics. And then once you are done with this lesson and you've done the Kahoot quiz and you're ready to start studying a little bit further for your editing quiz, make sure you've done the practice quiz in order to make yourself familiar with the format of the Blackboard quizzes. Now, remember, you can only take the quiz once, so make sure you really have enough time, it's quiet enough, you have a good internet connection, nobody's going to call you or interrupt you while you're taking the quiz. Then you can find the quiz here under quizzes, and then you will see that there's a link for practice quiz, editing quiz 1, editing quiz 2, and once you've done the practice quiz and you've studied enough and you have a good chunk of time, go ahead and take editing quiz 1 before the deadline, which is the end of the day on Friday, March 27th for my classes. Disclaimer. Okay, and then also before you do that, I have a study guide that I've prepared for you guys. Also, just to let you know that I am the one who wrote the questions for these quizzes a little over 3 years ago, and I've reviewed them recently as well as some of my colleagues, and all of the chapters in my study guide as well as in the module guide are completely correlated to the editing quiz, so you should not have the issue of saying something was in the quiz that wasn't in the book, because we clearly outline which chapters you need to have, and it should be in the 13th edition, global edition of the Little Brown Handbook. If you have an older edition of the book, it's possible that your book doesn't cover some of the content, so you need to make sure you have the right edition of the book and that you've studied the correct chapters before you take the editing quiz. And the study guide here is very clear. All of chapter 3 you should study, all of chapter 17, 18, and then chapter 37, section G. I will show you that in today's lesson, and then you've done the reading for the common misspelling or spelling mistakes. That's chapter 40, section A. And so that's for editing quiz 1. All right. And then once you've studied everything in the study guide and you've prepared, go ahead and do that editing quiz. And then before next week's lesson, go ahead and do on page 392 in the Little Brown Handbook, the clear sentences exercise. And also read the article that is listed there, the top 20 errors in undergraduate writing. That is the only external material that is in any of the editing quizzes, and that's in editing quiz 2. Everything else comes directly from the chapters that we mentioned from the Little Brown Handbook. Okay, so we will get started now. I'm going to open up my Little Brown Handbook. Now, again, as I've mentioned, I'm using the e-reader platform perlego.com, and you can get a free 2-week trial there as well. And just make sure if you don't want to continue your subscription with them that you cancel it before the end of the 2 weeks. I find it super useful. It's super handy. I really like it. I almost prefer it over having my actual book. My book is in my desk, unfortunately, at the Hague University, and I have been basically quarantined, self-imposed, since Thursday evening, so I have not been able to go back and get it, and that is why I had to find this online option, and it's super handy. I definitely recommend it. And I will let you guys know both in the hard copy edition of the book that is required for this course, the 13th Global Edition, what page we are on as I go through the exercises, as well as here on the Perlego e-reader, what pages we are on. So we're going to start in the e-reader on page 78, and in the actual textbook it will start on page 74. We're looking at chapter 3, unit 3E. And we're going to go through this part right here, point number 2, using an editing checklist. So, checklist for editing. The first section, are my sentences clear? You should be familiar with these sections that are covered here. We see a clear page range that you can go over to review these topics using exact language, parallelism, clear modifiers, clear reference of pronouns, complete sentences, and sentences separated correctly. So these are things that if you are not familiar with them, scan through these pages, and the ones that you are struggling with, do the exercises and work on that. This is largely self-study, this section of this course, and in order to become a good writer, you need to really practice. So you have to put forth the time and energy yourself in order to improve and learn. The next section, are my sentences effective? You want to become familiar with these ways of testing that. So understanding what voice is in writing, understanding how to emphasize your main ideas, how to use smooth and informative transitions to link different ideas together, different paragraphs together, how to create some variety in your sentence length and structure. You don't want to have all long drawn out sentences or all short choppy sentences, and you don't want to have all simple sentences or all complex compound sentences. You need some variety, and also the way that you use your in-text citations should vary as well. So just that section there is very useful for you, as well as using appropriate language, formal versus informal English, and using concise sentences. So one of the things about academic English is that you really need to be concise as much as possible, be specific without any kind of vague ideas. You should be as clear as possible. And then this section, if you want to focus on any section here from this checklist the most, or emphasize any portion of this checklist, definitely bare minimum review these common errors: spelling errors, sentence fragments, comma splices. Very important. For the editing quizzes, yes, definitely there will be questions about these topics in the editing quizzes, but also just for your writing, you need to have a really good foundation in these areas: the grammar, avoiding fragments, avoiding comma splices, and having at least a B1 plus B2 spelling level, preferably B2 plus towards C1 on the Common European Framework. And then it goes on to mention some sections where you can read about verb errors, which are very common, as well as pronoun errors and punctuation errors. Okay, and note, no pressure, no writer needs every item on the list. As you receive feedback from your peer review, and you get feedback from me, if you did an in-class summary, then you will have gotten some feedback from me already. Then you will become more experienced with your errors, and that will vary from student to student. So some students will spend a lot of time looking at perhaps comma splices, and another student will be looking more at spelling errors. So it depends on you and your level and your weaknesses and strengths, where you will spend the most time focusing your studies. Okay, so I want to bring us down now. Actually, that is the last thing that I wanted to do here from this unit. You read 3A through D, and E, this you should look at yourself, and then the rest of the third chapter through F, and I believe G gives you some good tips, some good examples. Beyond that, you should read through this as well. 3H, not as important, but through G, 3A through G are really useful for you. Okay, we're going to move on forward now. We're going to skip ahead to chapter 17. So in the e-reader, it is on page 359, and in the actual book, the 13th Global Edition, we are on page 355. So I'm going to skip ahead here to page 359. Take a sip of tea. Okay, so we're going to do the exercises from 17D and E. You will see this section is all about fragments. So you see some examples here about fragments and how to revise the fragments. And you guys can look through that in your own books in your own time. Right now what we're going to look at is exercise 17.2, revising sentence fragments. Correct any sentence fragment below by combining it with a main clause or by making it a main clause. If an item contains no sentence fragment, mark the number preceding it. So I'm going to just show you guys this number 1 through 10, and I want to ask you to pause the video, do the exercise, try to correct these fragments. We have here the example. I do not know entirely how to pronounce this, so I will do my best at this. My apologies if I butchered this. Jujitsu is good for self-protection because it enables one to overcome an opponent without the use of weapons. So the first sentence, Jujitsu is good for self-protection, is fine. It's a regular sentence. But the next sentence, because, now remember, anybody who had me for Introduction to English Writing or who has been to my classes this semester for English writing skills knows my pet peeve, the nails on chalkboard pet peeve of mine about starting sentences with but, and, because. I've added some more over the years. Those are the main three, but starting a sentence with so or some other prepositions also can be problematic for but, and because. Definitely do not start your sentences. There's always a better way to start a sentence than by using one of those words. Also, almost always there's a better way to start a sentence than using a numeric value, a number at the start of your sentence. But one of the reasons why, other than it being stylistically not the cleanest way, is that it often leads to writing fragments. And here's an example of that. Because it enables one to overcome an opponent without the use of weapons. So if you took away this first sentence here, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm covering the first sentence, Jujitsu is good for self-protection. If you take that away and you just start from because it enables one to overcome an opponent without the use of weapons. What helps one to overcome an opponent without the use of weapons? The subject here is missing. We don't know. So that is something that you need to be wary of. You can find these mistakes more easily in other students' writing than in your own writing because they're too close to your own writing. So that's why peer review is so essential to finding these sentence fragments. And I know that we have spell check and grammar check on Microsoft Word these days. And I'm not familiar with Grammarly using the actual software of it. They do post some really nice blogs that I have linked to in some of my writing classes. But what I've heard is that also Grammarly does not catch all of the grammar mistakes from students anyhow. So you want to make sure that you are able to revise your fragments on your own, that your English level is high enough that you can recognize and correct a sentence fragment. Okay, so what they've done here is simply taken away the full stop. They've taken away the period in the middle and made the capital B a lowercase because the conjunction here, because, is strong enough to link those two clauses, the main clause and the subordinate. We have no issue. You don't need to start a new sentence or add any extra words. You can simply take out the period and make the capital B a lowercase b and just say, Jujitsu is good for self-protection because it enables one to overcome an opponent without the use of weapons. Okay, so go ahead and do the same for numbers 1 through 10 and pause the video, and then I will show you the answers in a moment. So pause. Yes? You've done the whole exercise? Really? Okay, let's look at the answers then. So, exercise 18. Oops, sorry. I got ahead of myself. Exercise 17.2. Right here, revising sentence fragments. So pause the video, take a look at the answers that are given here for 1 through 10 and compare them to your own. If you don't understand why they've done something the way they have, if it differs from your own answer, then go ahead and write a comment below on this video, or in the discussion forum in Blackboard, you can write in your question there to me, and hopefully I will have an answer to you relatively quickly. Please do not send me emails with homework questions or studying questions because I get it's just too chaotic and unorganized if I get questions about content there. So all of your content related study questions should be either posted in Blackboard or here in the comment section of these videos, so that I can address those all at the same time. And also some of your classmates may have a similar or the same question, and it's always useful to see how I answer other students, and you may get some additional information through that. So please reserve emails for either urgent matters or for personal matters only regarding those things. Okay, so hopefully you've understood that, and if you haven't, then comment below or write me in the forum section in the class thread on Blackboard. We're going to do one more exercise then in 17E. Now there are some examples of fragments that are they are incomplete sentences, but they are considered correct. So phrases such as, "oh no," or "move along," these are not typically used though in academic writing, so you will not make much use of them, but it is still a good exercise for you to practice with revising these sentences. So we're going to go ahead and do exercise 17.3 and revise the following paragraph to eliminate sentence fragments by combining them with main clauses or rewriting them as main clauses. So I would like for you to pause the video and revise the fragments in this paragraph here. All right, you all set? Yes? All right, then let's look at this. So sorry it's split between 2 pages. This is one of multiple possible options. There's always more than one way to, well, there isn't always. I correct myself now. There is often more than one way to correct a fragment or a run-on sentence, and these are the suggestions that the answer key has given. So pause the video and take a look at that. If you have different answers and you want to know if your answers are also correct or possibilities, then comment below with your answers or post in the discussion forum. All right, so the next section we will go to is in the next chapter. So we're going to 18. Just bring up my e-reader again. Yes. Comma, splices, and fused sentences. This starts on page 357 in your textbook and 361 in the e-reader. So go ahead and follow along with us. What we will be looking at here is how to connect clauses together and how to fix the fused or run-on sentences. So we're going to look at page 358. Okay, how do we punctuate 2 or more main clauses? There's a few ways to do this. The simplest way is to simply make 2 sentences out of the 2 main clauses. So main clause, period, main clause, period. Hybrid cars are popular with consumers, full stop. Automakers are releasing new models, full stop. Now, you can do that your entire paper through. What's the problem with that? Your paper will be full of short, choppy sentences. So that doesn't really read nice. It doesn't flow. It's not very cohesive. There isn't enough variety, and it's not the highest academic level either. So it is an option when you don't know what else to do, and definitely there is room for short, concise sentences in academic writing, but they should be mixed in and used together with longer sentences. So another option, link your main clauses with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So then you have main clause, comma, your coordinating conjunction in the middle, and then the following main clause. So hybrid cars are popular with consumers, comma, and automakers are releasing new models. Nice, huh? Good. Okay, now my favorite, the creme de la creme of punctuation, the semicolon. So what do we want to do with the semicolon here? Well, basically, it connects two main clauses that are related to each other. And you have main clause, semicolon, and then main clause here. So, hybrid cars are popular with consumers, semicolon. Automakers are releasing new models. So they are their own sentences, but they're related enough that you can connect them with simply a semicolon. Now, the last section here, relate main clauses with a semicolon and a conjunctive adverb or transitional expression. So this is getting a little fancy. It's not as difficult really as I'm making it sound. So you have the main clause, your semicolon, then the conjunctive adverb or transitional expression, and there are lots of examples in this chapter that you can go through if you're not sure how to do that. And then the following main clause. Hybrid cars are popular with consumers, semicolon. As a result, that's your transitional expression, as a result, comma, automakers are releasing new models. So this is really a nice, structured, clear, easy to follow academic sentence in the grammar sense. Okay, so let's take a look here. With a comma splice or a fused run-on sentence, two main clauses run together without one of the signals listed in the box. So one of those things that we just went through. And readers often must reread for sense. And even if they reread, they have to assume they understand your meaning. That's a good chunk, probably 40% of my rereading I do when I read students' papers, if not more, is because of improper grammar. And I have to assume the meaning of the writer, the purpose of the sentence. And sometimes I don't assume correctly, but because the language is not clear and the grammar is not correct, I can only make an assumption based on an educated guess. Okay, so here a comma splice joins or splices main clauses only with a comma. So we see here you never have an example with only a comma. You have either a period, which is a stronger punctuation mark, or you have a comma with a coordinating conjunction, or you have a semicolon, which is also stronger than a comma, or you have even semicolon, conjunctive adverb with transitional expression, and a comma. So you have one of those options to connect those two main clauses, one of those four. But sometimes students think just plopping in a comma in between the two main clauses is sufficient, and it's simply not. So if you have a main clause and then a subordinate clause, one that's dependent on the main clause in order to make sense, then that's okay. You can use just a comma. But not if they're two separate main clauses, sentences that can stand on their own. So here's an example. The ship was huge. Its mast stood 80 feet high. So you can do that sentence with a full stop, you can do it with a semicolon, you can do it using a coordinating conjunction and a comma, etc. But you can't do it with just a comma. So hopefully that's clear, and you'll have some exercises now to look at. The next one is a fused sentence or run-on sentence where the sentence kind of looks like two sentences running into each other, kind of crashing in together. So two main clauses are connected together without any punctuation, not even the flimsy comma, just nothing. So here's the example. The ship was huge, its mast stood 80 feet high. Okay, so we need to put some punctuation there in order to make those two main clauses clear. Just a cultural note then there below, an English sentence may not include more than one main clause unless the main clauses are separated by a comma and a coordinating conjunction, or by a semicolon or colon. If your native language does not have such a rule or has accustomed you to writing long sentences, you may need to edit your English writing, especially for comma splices and fused sentences. And since obviously I have many Dutch students and German students as well, actually, the use of commas is very different in Dutch and German. So you need to become familiar with the English comma rules. Okay. Right. So we have lots of examples then following that. I just want to check which exercise I want to do with you guys. Yeah, I want to do 18.2 and 18.3. But there's many examples here for you guys to go through. And definitely I advise doing that, looking at the comma splice and how to revise it, using these different examples of how to do that. Again, more transitional expressions can be looked at on page 97 and 98. And there's also a longer list of the conjunctive adverbs on page 281. And even more examples here. You definitely are not short on examples. This book is fantastic, the Little Brown Handbook. It's really, I know that sounds hyperbolic and you're thinking that, oh, she's American, so she's just being over the top. I'm not. I've worked with a lot of textbooks. I've written English textbooks. I've grammar books. Really, this is easily in my top 2. I have 2 of my favorites, other than the book, that grammar exercise book that I wrote, of course, that are written by somebody other than me. I have 2 English books that I really believe in, and this is one of them. And this one is the one that's based on academic writing. Okay, so yes, that's exercise 18.1. If you want to do that exercise, feel free, and you can contact me if you don't have access to the answers. You can contact me to get the answers or send me your answers, and then I will give you feedback. You're welcome to do that. But right now, just pause the video or open your book to go to exercise 18.2, sentence combining to avoid comma splices and fused sentences. So go ahead and read the instructions there, take a look at the example, and do this exercise. And then I'm going to pull up the answers for you, and you can pause the video and compare the answers to your answers. So, pause. Alright guys, so we're going to scroll on down to the answers for exercise 18.2. And before we do that, I'm going to point out this acronym called FANBOYS. If we were having class in person, I probably would have written this on the board and done an exercise about this, similar to Texas, like we had the acronym in Introduction to English Writing. However, it's a little bit harder to do in an interactive fashion online. But FANBOYS, if you want to write it in your notes, in your Cornell note-taking method style, you can see here main clause, comma, and then your coordinating conjunction and another main clause. You can remember, I can't remember. What are the coordinating conjunctions? Think of FANBOYS, the F for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Okay? Okay, so these were the answers to 18.1, and here are the answers for 18.2. Please pause the video, take a look at the answers, and compare them to your own. Okay, now that you're back, we're going to go ahead and do exercise 18.3, revising comma splices and fused sentences, so in a different manner. Identify and revise the comma splices and fused sentences in the following paragraph. So pause the video, look at the paragraph, revise it. Did you do the exercise? Good. Now we'll look at the answer key here. Okay. So if you have questions about the answers versus your questions, comment below, write your questions, or go ahead in the discussion forum and class threads and write your questions there. Note that I may respond to the comments in the video a little bit quicker, just because I'm not going to be reviewing the content in the discussion forum until next week for English writing skills. But at any rate, you will get some feedback from me if you post questions in work there. Alrighty. So, moving on. We're going to skip ahead in the book to chapter 37, 37G specifically. So if you have your book, make sure to open it to page 500.